round, gents.
Thank you, Your Worship. The Arts Centre. So, no specific line funding for that, but some grant applications, money available from Strengthening Communities Fund. As you're aware, a large number of submitters, almost all of whom wanted the council to provide support for the Arts Centre and the LTP. And their focus was there has been discussion through the CE with the Arts Centre, and there's sort of a proposal for 3 years there before you. So 830,000 in total, 110,000 existing grant from the Sustainable Communities Fund, 100,000 in rates remission, and 620 from the Capital Endowment Fund. So none of those have an impact on rates, and I think, John, I'll ask you to confirm they're already getting about 110 from the Sustainable Communities Fund.
Anyway. Yes, they are. Strengthening Communities Fund.
We've
got a lot of funds.
Yeah, Strengthening Communities Fund, beg your pardon. Then year two, 110 again from the Strengthening Communities, 100 in rates remission, and 420 from the Capital Endowment Fund. Year three, 520. So it's 100 in rates remission and 420 from the Capital Endowment Fund. So we'll take questions on.
So perhaps if I could the discussion with the CE of the Arts Centre. So one was the 830 in our discussion last week, 830k was seen as sufficient with them not funding for depreciation for a couple of years, but trying to find a way in future years to fund for depreciation, and that may be through the income they get from the Ducks building. However, last night the CE did come back saying they wanted another 110, the 110 as well as that 830, but we think this is sufficient, but do have to alert you that the CE did say 830 plus the additional 110k.
Okay. So we had two questions. Sarah first, then Andre.
Thanks so much. One thing that we discussed in earlier discussions was trying to find a model that allowed this to be sustainable over time so that we don't face exactly the same campaign in 3 years' time. But the current proposal looks like what will happen next time is that there will be if we've only put money in for 3 years, there will be you're defunding the Arts Centre narrative, because there'll be nothing in year 4 of the LTP, and so next LTP there'll be the same campaign because there'll be nothing there. And I'm just wondering if there's been any thought to a more sustainable model with line item funding right through the LTP, or if it's just the first 3 years.
So I think that the Arts Centre do expect ongoing sustainable funding from council. So I think this funding's just been put in for the first 3 years, but with the idea that funding would continue throughout the LTP. So that's just mapped out first years, and we do need to, they welcome us to work with them to look for other options for funding, but we do need to have discussions around the potential around how they maximise the revenue from the Ducks, and one of those may be looking at a capital grant or a capital loan to help them develop the Ducks, which means they can get the leasing income in for that as well.
Okay.
So it is. Yeah. I don't think that their view is that we could taper off our funding. We will be back where we are today if we tapered off our funding and did nothing else.
So the key sticking points for ongoing operations seem to be around the rates and insurance kind of things, which are large, and the 110, the existing grant, that's for specific programming, is that right? So that's more
The 110,000 grant is to support 2 positions involved with the programming and activation and creative program for the centre.
Yeah, that's right. So I don't think this is going to be enough, and I don't know whether that's sufficient as meaning that they are dipping into that fund,
Dipping
So-
into which fund?
the hotel maintenance
Oh,
fund,
no,
to be able
no.
to cope with that.
no.
Okay. So the stuff advice doesn't include currently ongoing funding in the LTP, but can that go in?
I think it does.
Just the stuff that's
Yeah,
in
we'll
front of us, that's
clarify.
all.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah.
But what we mustn't lose sight of, the ducks, and I haven't been privy to all the, sorry, not the ducks, the Arts Centre, and I haven't been privy to all the things. They're not changing their model. And I think that there's savings to be found, and if they're going to work with us and change, and we can assist them in advice to change their model. Up until now, there has been an allergic reaction to us wanting to help them, that they have got to change the way they do things. Otherwise, this will just keep going on and on forever. Sorry, Tim, Andre's next.
Well, there's also been an allergic reaction to us meeting with the board. So we resolved to work with them to find a more financially sustainable model or whatever it may be, but we haven't done that. Our council hasn't met with the board. So at what point do we do that?
Okay, that's okay.
When does this happen in the journey? Because we resolved to do that in November, December.
So there's nothing stopping you meeting with the board at all. So
No, there is, because it's been asked for a number of times.
Sorry,
It hasn't happened.
I hadn't finished to
Yeah,
clarify.
okay.
There's nothing stopping you with the board at all. The advice at the time was when you were in the middle of a hearings process, you should have them present as part of the hearings process, not have meetings off the side, because then every 7,000 submitters could say we'd like a side meeting. So you're in a formal process when you're in a formal consultation. So, but there's nothing when you're out of that formal consultation, out of the LTP, you can meet with the board at any time prior to us going into the consultation. You could meet with them any time, and the board did come and present to you as part of the LTP process.
So how can our council know that these numbers are sufficient if we're not meeting with them?
Mary's
So as I said, that I met with the CE last week. We agreed 830k was sufficient, and they wouldn't fund their depreciation for the first years, but we would have to look at a remedy for that.
Yeah.
And as I said yesterday afternoon, evening, they did come back and say they needed the 830 and the 110k. So that's their view and opinion.
So the new bottom line is 940. Is that what you're saying?
The numbers to me suggest like they'll be back with a campaign next year. Is that fair to say? Okay. Oh, yeah. My question was sort of the same as Sarah's.
So that's not what they said. They said that if they got this funding, they could then work with us to actually try to resolve the issue around depreciation and see if savings could be made. And that was their idea. They this decrease may be an issue, but we don't know.
we don't know.
So you could put a placeholder in for the first 3 years of 830k if you wanted to, as opposed to decrease. But we're anticipating that potentially based on the Deloitte's report, we could potentially find savings.
Melanie next.
One was a process question. I just wasn't clear. Are we just getting this information? Are we giving any guidance today, or is just the mayor's recommendations going in? And if we want to follow staff advice or something else,
guidance.
Just guidance.
Guidance today.
No,
Yep.
this will be something that's voted on, I'd imagine.
Yeah.
So okay,
So if you guidance would be good for us.
hang on
It's
a
not-
minute. What?
Well, guidance from what the councillors think would be good.
This won't go into the mayor's recs, I'm sure. It'll be something that's voted on at the end.
If people put amendments in, so if no one does anything, then the other thing. Is it what you're saying?
No, the staff, we're saying it would be good to get guidance from councillors today. What
How are
your
we doing that?
thinking
Are we doing it
is.
all at the end after we've gone through
No,
the
you
whole
can-
lot?
You can do it now.
I'm happy.
We haven't
I'm
talked
happy
about
with
the
staff
previous
advice. I
ones
think
yet.
it's great.
That's all. And I was just, Sam and I were talking about the 2025 year. Would it be possible to if the staff from the staff one to make that 420 rather than 620 from the CEF, and then give some more money to Arana Park. So I think use some of that to contribute to Arana Park.
So reduce the amount for the Arts Centre as views. And we've got obviously alternative views.
Yeah, that's just in my view
Yeah,
for
that's
Arana
great.
Park. The main issue is cash rather than anything else.
You'd
I
rather
think.
put it there than here?
The Arts
Yeah.
Centre.
Yeah, okay, that's fair enough. That's your, yeah. Tim, please.
Yeah, thank you. I think the key with this is actually our staff working with the Arts Centre to work out the business plan, the business model going forward. And it doesn't happen overnight. It's not a magic wand. So it does take time. So we've got to give a bit of credit to our staff.
Took a couple of years with Ferry Meat, so.
Yeah, exactly. And so, this is a long-term thing with the Arts Centre and other partners. This is like decades, 50 years, 100 years, etc. So to expect just suddenly happen, they just don't. So I think the 3-year identified here is a really good way forward, because remember, Arts Centre came to us with 1.8 million, and now it's 900 is the essential. So, we've got to kind of move carefully forward to ensure they've got a good foundation for the next 50 to 100 years. That's what we need to do for our city. So I'm going to support this. I think it's a good way forward. But I do want councillors to be informed on the way through with regards to what is negotiated and what is going forward with the whether we choose to meet with the board or whatever. That's a side issue. I think we've got to make sure that the business plan is absolutely locked in and within 3 years.
Okay, thank you. Jake?
Thank you. I'm happy with this too. I'm glad staff are as little as $100,000 away from unanimous agreement between us and the Arts Centre. I think I take Sarah's point in terms of that long-term funding, but I would remind colleagues that we still have the asset management plan from the Arts Centre to come, and that's where we can have that conversation about the depreciation piece. So we are due to have one more conversation with the Arts Centre between now and the 3-year life of this LTP. So, we should put all the questions to bed eventually.
Mm-hmm. James and then Pauline.
Yeah. Is it not possible that we could actually just almost remove the Arts Centre from this LTP process in general and look at it in I guess a unique and dedicated setting? Because I think what's very clear to me through all of this is that there are wider issues here. It's complex, it's emotive, and I'm not convinced the LTP framework is a conducive one to actually allowing us to sort out these processes, because I actually think sitting down with them and working through some of the issues would be a positive thing to do. But I think that in terms of an LTP, that's something that's just not going to be realistic, because there's a whole lot of other issues that crop up if we were to go down this path. And objectively, I think that's probably what needs to happen. But if that's going to jeopardise, the robustness of the LTP, then isn't maybe the obvious alternative that we kind of ring fence it and go, let's get the LTP put to bed, and we will deal with this wider issue in a different setting as a matter of urgency.
So that would be possible but you would be contained to funding them out of your grant funding schemes, which is what's suggested here: strengthen communities, the rate remission scheme, and the capital endowment fund. And you would have to have sufficient funds within those funding schemes to fund them sufficiently. Because if you want to fund them anything outside those agreed funding programs, you should put it in the LTP.
Well, that sounds like that's doable, though, isn't it? Because I think what's clear is that the issues are not just depreciation. And I think although we've had a tremendous amount of submissions with it, they've kind of attacked a straw man. And I appreciate the sentiment behind it that the Arts Centre is a really special place. But I think what's really clear coming through the submissions is what they're saying is the Arts Centre is special to us, but how they're saying it is if you don't support them, there's not going to be an Arts Centre and the leases are going to go, which is just not true. The Arts Centre's not going anywhere, the leases aren't going anywhere. But what is true is that there's some serious question marks around how it's being managed, the staffing levels, where their insurance cover sits, and all of these things add up to like a death by 1,000 cuts, where they're in a situation where their business model is rattle the tin louder, and that's not helpful for them, and it's probably not fair on a really good organisation and good people that are associated with something that's really special to Christchurch. And I kind of feel that we're going to be a bit hamstrung kind of trying to come up with a solution in this framework when really sitting down and working through the issues in a dedicated way and in an open, transparent way with them might be
I
more
think
conducive to
for
getting
the
a
LTP,
good outcome
given the number of
long-term.
submissions, we're going to have to flag in some way that we do intend to fund them through. So because of the quantum of submissions, you're going to have to flag you intend to fund them. May even have to flag the range that you're looking at funding them, but and it will be through the existing funding program.
Yes,
And then
surely
get the exact
that's
amount.
possible. I agree with that. I agree that there has to be something there. It's just though I don't know if this framework is going to be the best one. And the more we've gone through this, the more hamstrung I see that we are to actually finding a genuine solution for them. And the last thing I would want to do, and I think probably everyone in this room, is to, as Andre said, almost promote a campaign again for them to do a round 2 come annual plan, whereas we're probably better to do it once and do it properly. But I think, no one has a crystal ball, but kind of crystal ball gazing is we're going to come up with a solution.
Could we come back with some advice after the break about exactly how we would word it and address it and cope with it within the LTP? Because we will need to flag it in some way. Yeah. We'll come back with some advice. We'll talk amongst the finance.
Pauline, then Vic.
I mean, that's a long-term vision, and that's a good thing. I think at the moment, when you realistically speaking, their insurance is still 1.2 million and their rates are still 200,000. This doesn't even fund that. So I think in the essence of interest of time, I think we need to actually give them some surety this year at least the 3 years. So I like this option. I think I'll be supporting that at the moment because I really don't think there's time to develop an alternative option at the moment, but that's something we can work on in a parallel stream going forward.
We could put a hold some and go up and down from the grant scheme. So we'll
Victoria?
Yeah, thanks, Andre and James, for raising that. I think there's some merit in that. It raises the question for me. We're stuck in the confines of this long-term plan process, and if we just keep on doing what we've always done, then we're always going to end up with the same thing, and which means that the Arts Centre is constantly going to be coming back to us. The bit that I keep getting stuck on is in terms of the long-term financial sustainability and giving them some certainty for the next 10 years, is that given that we're spending ratepayer money, I think it is prudent on us to constantly review how we're applying those funds. And I think that in 3 years a lot can change. So whilst I think there's merit to that, and I like the idea of trying to do it differently perhaps, I'm just still struggling with that bit in terms of the need to constantly review, and the 3 year cycle in that respect seems to also have merit. So I've just got to figure that little bit out. I think it's prudent for us to constantly review.
So you're saying every 3 years rather than fire it in and leave it for every 10? Okay. Tyler needs you.
For the stuff to bring back, the question I've got is what sits within the LTP within the current proposal here and what does not?
So currently 110k from the Strength and Communities Fund.
Sits within the LTP process.
It's a multi-year. It was a 3 year funding. It's got 2 years left to go next year and the year after.
Okay, so could we commit to whatever's in the LTP and then work with the additional money outside of that?
I think we do need to flag something, but can we come back? Because I think
it's just for staff to just take away.
Yeah, so we can come back even after the break with some stuff. So it's actually just exactly how we'd flag it, but with some wording about scope for further discretion from these funds.
Got you. Okay, thanks.
Thanks. 2 quick points. Firstly, to Councillor Henstock's point, just in that having funding throughout all 10 years of the long-term plan doesn't preclude a review, and we could actually pass a resolution as part of the funding agreement that it is reviewed on a 3-yearly basis or something like that. And I think that would be prudent, and I think that that's a good idea. So I would still like to see it all the way through. The other thing is that I'm unclear as to, while we've had some feedback on the first year, whether there's enough funding in there. While I acknowledge that it's $200,000 less from the Capital Endowment Fund, I'd be in favour of in FY26 having those things that are there, so we're not using as much of the CEF. Interest rates will be down, there won't be as much there, but topping that up by 200,000 actually just from rates funding to keep it at the same amount for the 3 years, for those for those 3 years there. Even if the Arts Centre does have a capital grant and all those kind of things, it's going to be a few years before that is fixed and people in place and less money coming in. And so I think that having that, consistent money over the 3 years instead of first year up and then dropping it would be good.
I still go back to Ferrymead, and you were over there as well. We got the report done. It took a year or two to get it implemented, but it worked because they had not a lot of appetite to change. It was just give us more money, and we need to work with these guys with a report to say this is where you can save some dough going forward.
We have had
because
that.
Otherwise it will just go on forever.
Yeah, we have had that report though. We've
For
had
these
a
guys?
report on the Arts Centre saying that actually there's very little.
I still believe their model's growing. Samuel.
Report though was limited in its scope, so the terms of reference didn't actually ask us to look at whether the operations were consistent and good practice. That was the fundamental issue with the report. I was going to say I really like what James and Andre have come up with in terms of having the conversation with the board, maybe ring fencing the capital endowment, so that you get to a point where we have a conversation. Then everyone in the community knows that the money we are putting in is going to the right for the right reasons and for the right purpose. Because it sort of alarms me in a sense that, and I think Mary, you've done a great job. You know, they started at 1.8. They've then come back and said the day that they were here, they said 900. The chair said 900. The chief executive has now said 800, and then he's phoned you over the week or emailed you over the weekend saying, actually, no, sorry, I got that wrong, it's another 100. And you kind of go, well, when we're rating people for that, how can we give absolute surety to the public that what we're spending is every dollar is going and is well used? So if we could get that compromise where we maybe hold the existing strengthening communities funding, the 110, the rates remission I'm still a bit iffy on because I thought that would just be subsidising the businesses in there. I thought that was if we're remitting rates, then they're passing a lot of that on. So
They weren't passing. They weren't on charging the rates.
But they are on charging some. So it'd be good to understand. The last thing I don't think people want to do is then subsidise the businesses in there, if that is the case, because that wouldn't necessarily work.
That's why we need a good report.
Correct.
Yeah. And then that capital endowment fund, if we know that the range is there, then it'd be good to get that work done. But it just feels like it's still a bit piecemeal, and it's not on our side. I think our guys have been very, very clear. But if the numbers keep changing on their side, then we need to do something that.
The commercial businesses, they recover the OPEX. The commercial so all you're doing with that
is passing it on.
Subsidising the most commercial businesses.
Yeah.
It's the other way around if the ones that you want to recover.
Whereas it sounds like, to Andre's point, we get them, the plan is we get the review, we get whoever's doing it to actually have the terms of reference which indicate the actual operating model. We know that we've given them, through capital endowment this year a certain amount, and then we come back in the annual plan and we can potentially land on something. The other thing would just be the advice around from 28 onwards for the rest of that 10-year period. Is the intention of that to come out of capital endowment, or if that's rates funded as well? Yeah.
We'll come back.
But I think we're actually nearly at a kind of halfway house that works for everyone. But yeah.
Okay, Melanie. Oh, yeah, Melanie, Jake, and then Andre.
This is just a general comment based actually on what Sarah said, is that, and I have no opinion on this, it's just that when we get 4,000 submissions about the Arts Centre, I don't think the ratepayers actually care if it comes from rates rather than Capital Endowment Fund, because they have asked for this. So just bear that in mind. I don't think it actually, if we all agreed to fund it at rates and rates went up a little bit for the Arts Centre, I don't think the public would look badly at that. So just keep that in mind.
You're saying a targeted rate for the Arts Centre?
No, I'm just saying that if our rates go up to cover the Arts Centre, it sounds like we've listened to the public and it's something that they're actually willing to pay a little bit more for.
One thing that
I'm just saying.
In all the Arts Centre's advertising, it said that we were scrapping all funding. Well, the 110 grand was there all along, so it was a bit disingenuous of what they were saying. Jake, please.
On a slightly different topic, the rates remission, I also have a slight issue with. I'm curious to get the answer to the question that Sam's raised, just to make sure we're not inadvertently offering a subsidy to the wrong customers. But is there any reason that we're funding 100k via rates remission? I mean, it's just money we would otherwise collect and then give back. I've always just found it tidier to make everyone pay rates and then hand out grants rather than going, we're going to give you a weird kind of unclear grant by way of remission. Is there any benefit to us doing it this way?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I think it's just another funding stream looked at. No, either option would work. Yep.
The same. It just feels cheaper. It feels cheaper, but it's not. Okay, I probably would support that specifically.
6 of one, half a dozen of the other.
Well, it's the same, but it's messy.
Okay, Andre.
Thank you. I mean, I think sort of points we made. One of the most helpful parts of this process was having them in the room to talk and ask questions. But what needs to be in any form of resolution is doing that work on any form of review very, very soon, like as good as immediately in the first year. We can't have a chit chat at some stage in the next 3 years. So a lot of claims have been made. This could be done better. That could be done better. Well, let's go ahead and do that work very, very soon. Not within the next 3 years. It's got to be within this first year. Yeah. So something on those lines, in my view, needs to be in the resolution. Because again, what I'm looking at, it looks like you're looking at another campaign in a year's time. If we haven't done that work, then we've got no proof things can be done better. If things can be done better, we need to front up with the proof for not just them but the public as well. Yeah.
Thank you, Aaron. Then Pauline.
Most of the points been raised, but the overwhelming clear one here is the 4,158 submitters. And yes, it's part of a driven campaign, but that's second only to the stadium. We didn't have that many on climate change. We didn't have that many on cycleways, on roads, on anything. It was a standout, and so which gives us a clear signal that the public see the Arts Centre as a public realm, as part of the city's facilities. So they see it no differently than they see the art gallery, the museum, and sports fields and all the libraries. That's how they see the Arts Centre. The fact that it's run differently is different, but they see it that way, and it's our job to come up with whatever works for them. Now, we might see that it's not run efficiently, but there's members of the public would say, neither is the council. No, that's what this is just feedback, because we heard it at the end of the table. And so before we go throwing stones in glass houses, we should just look to get this sorted as best we can. But the public have overwhelmingly said they see this as their zone. They want it looked after. So however we skin that cat, the cat's got to be skinned. Yeah. Well, that's part of our pest management program.
Pauline.
Thank you. I don't like cats with no fur. Anyway, I'm just wondering, can we please have the rating impact on the 620 that's intended from the capital, if we don't take it from the Capital Endowment Fund? So we need to have that alternative. And also...
Just under 0.1%.
Sorry? Yes.
Yeah, just under 0.1%. If you don't take it from the Capital Endowment Fund, rates would go up by just under 0.1%.
0.1%.
Thank you.
And if we're doing a review, where is that coming from? I assume it would be around 50,000, like the Orana Park and the Ferrymead one.
So what the Arts Centre has asked for was to work with council staff to find a model. I don't think they want us to throw in a external review.
We don't need an external one, so
that they have no say over of somebody.
That'll be in existing budgets. Thank you.
But we might need to pull some expert advice in for resource in for some things.
Yanni?
Just kind of interested in the idea that this is like probably one of the most significant heritage buildings within New Zealand, and yet there's very little money coming from central government through the various heritage funds, and I don't quite understand why. So I wondered if we're going to meet with people, can we meet with Department of Internal Affairs as well, and Ministry for Culture and Heritage, and possibly RATA, just to talk through a joint funding approach? Because I'm increasingly concerned that everyone's coming to us for funding. There's lots of other funding opportunities out there, and including central government, which has specific funds towards heritage and culture. So, you know, like, I just think we should be trying to facilitate as much central government investment or philanthropic investment into these organisations as well, and we should be trying to build some sort of partnership with Rata. They do. They actually do fund. They give some funding to the Arts Centre, as I understand it, for their programs.
So can I just be clear? I sense that the advice you'd like us to come back with is something around some core funding from rates, with some ability after discussions to potentially move some of that up from discretionary funding.
Yeah, so for me, one of the things about the Capital Endowment Fund is it's been incredibly useful for those things that pop up during the year from our communities, and having it most of it, or a big hunk, going to one organisation during the LTP process limits our ability to do those things. And I'd be the same with the rates remissions. It seems tidier just to rate
So
for
with
it.
the rate, you'd need to actually determine the amount that you wanted to fund from rates, but we'll come back with some advice after the
I think one thing going forward, when we're hearing both sides of our staff should talk to the Arts Centre people, but as Mary said, we still need somewhere in there, because it'll be, we think this is good, we think that's good, and it'll be, we need an independent, not maybe a full report, but someone in there to give a clear outside look at it, just like we did with Ferrymead, because it worked extremely well with Ferrymead. It was real good. We do need to get going. We've got Tyler and then Aaron.
Just quickly around my thoughts, it seems palatable that we can charge a rate for as a part of this, and I would actually like to divert the funding from the Strengthening Communities Fund, seeing as we're not stepping it up, to be able to divert into other community groups. So using the Capital Endowment Fund as a top up instead of
it's already it's a multi-year grant,
that's fine.
already in there.
Okay. But from FY28 onwards, is that still?
We'll worry about that in the next one. Yeah, the crystal ball gets so cloudy when you look so far into it. Aaron, please, and then we'll move on if possible. Or Pauline, did you have one?
Yeah, just a quick follow-up on Yanni's point around the government funding. It'll be interesting to see how the Minister of Culture and Heritage could say or explain how this does get no funding when it's the largest group of that style of buildings of heritage buildings in the country. So as part of your process, what you're suggesting, Mr. Mayor, is that needs to be explored. How it must become some sort of government line item for part of its funding. Whatever that number is, but that must be found, and we need the answer as to why that's currently not. That just makes no sense. And then the other one is that we're talking about winding up our heritage fund. The public, I think, would be very happy that we keep our heritage separate rate, and it's tagged to this, so they can clearly see the heritage rate being applied to
all of
it
goes to that.
Yeah, but they can clearly see. They go, oh yeah, our family puts in $3.50 a year, or whatever the number is. You can clearly see it coming off your rates where it goes
for that.
Yep, for that.
Yep. Pauline.
Yeah, just quickly back on that rates remission. I tend to agree with Councillor McClellan, because we remit, as far as I'm aware, quite a large portion of their rates already that they can't. The 200,000 that we don't remit is for the commercial part. So if we start this precedent that's remitting a commercial amount of rate, that actually, in best practice, they should be passing on to the tenant. So I think I'd rather roll that 100 into the 620 and make it 720, and look at rating for that, or a combination of rating and capital endowment. I'm making a little list here of capital endowment, and it's huge. I'm calling it the slush fund. So I think we need to kind of be a little bit realistic about it. So that's where I'm coming from.
So the debate on the day will be new money or existing money. It's as simple as that, really, or a combination.
Or that heritage
and
thing
the quantum
that Aaron said. We do need to get on with this. Russell, you're wearing out pencils down there with all the stuff that we're telling you to do. I'm sorry. I'm sorry about that. Okay, so we move on to the next one. Everyone's given a bit of advice on that.
As we explore the government one, the one to throw at them would be to cover the insurance. If the government cover the insurance, because they're always the big protector of the whole country, that means that they can say, this place is protected forever by us. We pay the insurance bill. And I think that would be a really decent proposal to take to the government. And that wipes out a big chunk of what they need. So if we can explore that, it would be.
Because it protects it for the future.
And yeah, so and that's their bit. No.
Won't do it.
hate heritage.
Okay.
Thank you.
Far away.